A teenage girl was brought into the hospital with terrible lower abdominal pain. When the doctor examined the girl's lower area, they were dumbfounded. In a modest, unassuming hospital tucked away in a quiet, rural town outside San Francisco, the usually still air of the emergency room was disrupted by hurried footsteps and muffled cries of pain. 15-year-old Claudia staggered into the room, clutching her mother Grace's arm tightly. The girl's face was contorted in agony, and a relentless moan escaped her lips with every step. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," she sobbed, her tear-filled eyes pleading for relief. Grace, visibly shaken, held her daughter with desperate strength, trying to offer reassurance she barely felt herself. She had tried everything: warm baths, soothing ointments, homemade remedies, but nothing had eased the unbearable pain tormenting her daughter. With no other options, she had rushed her here, hoping for a miracle. Grace approached the nurse on duty, a weary-looking but kind woman who sat at the front desk. "Please," Grace begged, her voice trembling with urgency, "my daughter is in so much pain. She needs help now." The nurse glanced up, her expression quickly shifting to concern as she took in the sight of Claudia. The girl's pale face and trembling body painted a vivid picture of her suffering. "What's going on?" the nurse asked, already reaching for a clipboard to take notes. "She's been complaining of terrible pain in her lower area," Grace explained, her voice cracking as she tried to maintain composure. "I've tried everything, but it's only gotten worse." The nurse nodded briskly and stood, her demeanor shifting to one of calm professionalism. "Don't worry, we'll take care of her." Turning to call for assistance, she said, "Doctor, we need you in here." Two nurses hurried over with a stretcher. As Claudia was carefully guided onto it, another sharp wave of pain tore through her, and she gripped her mother's hand with all the strength she could muster. "Mom," she whimpered, her voice thin and shaky. "What's happening to me? Why does it hurt so much?" Grace leaned close, stroking her daughter's damp hair in an attempt to soothe her. "We're here now, my love. They're going to help you. Just a little longer." "Okay," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The scene gripped the entire emergency room. Other patients waiting for care watched with empathetic glances, some murmuring quietly among themselves. Claudia's cries cut through the tense silence of the small hospital like a knife. Her agony was palpable, and Grace's silent tears reflected the helplessness of a mother unable to shield her child from such pain. "Let's take a look, sweetheart," the nurse said gently as Claudia was wheeled into an examination room. Despite her anguish, the girl nodded faintly, trusting in her mother's presence and the reassurance of help. Grace never let go of Claudia's hand, standing beside the stretcher with a steely determination that only a mother's love could provide. The staff moved quickly, preparing the examination area, while the cries of the young girl echoed through the halls, a painful reminder of the fragility of the moment. Just then, the sound of purposeful footsteps announced the arrival of Dr. Helena. Her calm but commanding presence immediately filled the room with a sense of control. Known for her expertise in gynecology and her empathetic bedside manner, she had a reputation for being a beacon of hope in moments like these. "Good evening, Grace, Claudia," she greeted them with a warm but authoritative tone. "I'm here now, and we'll figure this out together. Tell me what's been happening." Grace, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, tried to explain through her shaky breaths. "Doctor, my daughter has been in unbearable pain for hours. I've done everything I could think of, warm baths, ointments, but nothing has helped. I don't know what else to do," she said, her voice breaking with frustration and fear. Dr. Helena placed a reassuring hand on Grace's shoulder. "You've done the right thing by bringing her here. Let's take a closer look and get to the bottom of this." the doctor said before turning her attention to Claudia. "Sweetheart, don't worry. I'll be as gentle as possible. I just need you to tell me if anything feels uncomfortable, okay?" Claudia, her tear-streaked face trembling with fear, gave a small nod. Her voice wavered in a fragile whisper. "Will it hurt, doctor?" Helena leaned in with a soft, reassuring smile, her tone warm yet steady. "No, my love. I promise to be very careful. If you feel anything strange, let me know right away. I'm here to help you." Sitting beside the examination table, Grace clutched her daughter's hand tightly, her grip unwavering. "We're right here with you, sweetheart. Everything is going to be okay," she murmured, gently smoothing Claudia's hair. The doctor began the examination with deliberate, precise movements, her every action methodical and cautious. The room fell into a profound silence, the tension so heavy that even the sound of gloves snapping seemed deafening. Helena's eyes scanned for any signs, her movements purposeful as she searched for answers to explain the young girl's pain. A faint redness caught her attention, but it wasn't enough to account for the intense suffering Claudia was enduring. "Does this hurt, Claudia?" Helena asked gently as she shifted to another area. Claudia's jaw tightened and a soft whimper escaped her lips. She gripped her mother's hand even harder, her small frame trembling. "Yes, it hurts a lot," she sobbed. Helena glanced up at Grace, whose eyes were filled with unspoken questions, searching the doctor's face for a glimmer of reassurance. But Helena's furrowed brow betrayed her concern. "I'm going to need to perform a more detailed examination. There's nothing obvious on the surface, but the level of pain she's describing is too severe to ignore." "Is that okay, Claudia?" she asked softly. The girl turned her tearful gaze to her mother, seeking strength in her reassurance. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Grace bent down, pressing a gentle kiss to her daughter's forehead. "Yes, my love, let her help you. I know it hurts, but she's here to figure out what's wrong and make it better." With a shaky breath, Claudia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Helena resumed the examination with even greater precision, her face a mixture of intense concentration and growing unease. Every movement carried an undercurrent of urgency, as if the answers were just out of reach. Grace, on the verge of tears herself, clung to one fragile thought that kept her standing. "It's going to be okay." Yet the air in the room was thick with an unspoken fear, an unsettling tension that made each passing second feel endless. What could possibly be causing such pain in someone so young? The mystery loomed large, and both Claudia and Grace needed Helena to find the answers before the suffering became unbearable. This was only the beginning, but the weight of the moment was already profound, promising revelations that would shake them to their core. What would Helena uncover? What was happening to Claudia? The questions piled up, leaving everyone with a tightness in their chest and a desperate need for resolution. The small examination room seemed frozen in time. Helena adjusted the colposcope, her steady hands belying the gnawing unease within her. Claudia lay on the table, her sobs continuous, tears falling in a silent cascade. Grace, standing steadfast by her side, bore the etched marks of fear on her face, though she refused to let it show in her voice. "Claudia, this is just to get a better look, sweetheart. I'm here to help you." "Don't be scared," Helena said, her voice calm but tinged with a subtle urgency she tried to mask. "Will it hurt, doctor?" Claudia asked, her voice shaky and almost inaudible. "No, my dear, it won't hurt. But if anything feels strange, you tell me right away, okay?" Helena reassured her, though uneasiness simmered beneath her professional demeanor. Grace ran her fingers softly through Claudia's hair, projecting a calm she didn't feel. "We're here with you, baby. Just let the doctor do her work. You'll see. Everything's going to be fine," she whispered, though the cracks in her resolve deepened with every passing moment. Each gesture, each word was heavy with emotion as Helena pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth of Claudia's suffering. And as the mystery deepened, the stakes grew, leaving the small family suspended in a moment where hope and fear intertwined. Helena carefully adjusted the speculum, continuing with the examination. At first glance, everything appeared normal. There seemed to be no apparent reason for the unbearable pain Claudia had described. But then, something caught her attention. It was a barely noticeable movement, faint, but enough to make her breath catch. Furrowing her brow, Helena leaned closer, directing the colposcope's light more precisely. "Doctor, is something wrong?" Grace asked, noticing the change in Helena's expression. "Just a moment," the doctor murmured, her eyes fixed on the area in question. "I think I saw something." The room plunged into a tense silence. Claudia, her face still streaked with tears, glanced at her mother with a mix of fear and confusion. "What's going on, Mum? What's the doctor looking at?" she asked, her trembling voice betraying her dread. Grace swallowed hard, trying to calm her daughter. "Sweetheart, the doctor is checking something. She knows what she's doing. Trust her, okay?" Helena, meanwhile, fine-tuned the colposcope and focused intently. What she saw made her heart skip. Deep in the shadowy canal, something stirred. It wasn't a reflection or a trick of the light, it was real. Something alive was moving. "My God," she whispered, barely aware she'd spoken aloud. Grace shot to her feet, gripping the edge of the examination table. "What do you mean, doctor? What's happening to my daughter?" she demanded, her voice laced with desperation. Helena, still grappling with what she'd seen, looked up at Grace, searching for the right words to describe the indescribable. "Grace, it appears there's something moving inside her, something alive. I need to investigate further to understand what it is." "Something alive?" Grace echoed, her voice heavy with disbelief. "What do you mean by that? Please, explain." Before Helena could respond, Claudia let out a choked cry, panic seizing her. "Mum, get it out! I don't want it there. Please, just take it out," she pleaded, her body twisting on the table as tears streamed down her face. Helena placed a steady hand on Claudia's shoulder, trying to soothe her. "Claudia, listen to me. I know you're scared, but I'm not going to leave you to face this alone. We'll get through this together, step by step. I promise we'll figure this out." Grace, visibly shaken, fought to keep her tears at bay, not wanting to alarm her daughter further. "Doctor, how can there be something alive inside her? This doesn't make any sense," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of terror and disbelief. Helena took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay composed. "I don't know yet, Grace, but I'm going to find out. What matters now is that Claudia is here, and I'll do everything carefully and methodically. I just need both of you to trust me." Still sobbing, Claudia looked up at Helena with wide, frightened eyes. "Am I going to be okay, Doctor?" "Really?" she asked in a barely audible whisper. Helena took the girl's hand firmly, offering a reassuring smile. "You're going to be fine, Claudia. I promise you that." Yet, deep inside, Helena knew that what she had seen was far from ordinary. It was a mystery that would demand every ounce of her skill and experience to unravel. For now, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on all three of them, filling the air with a tension so thick that every passing second felt like an eternity. The questions loomed, relentless and urgent. What was that thing moving inside her? How had it gotten there? And most importantly, how could they remove it without causing further harm? The answers were still out of reach, but one thing was certain: the drama had only just begun. The discovery hit Helena like a jolt, shaking her to the core and igniting a firestorm of urgency and determination. The sight of that unnatural movement, that presence that had no business being there, froze Helena for a moment before her instincts kicked in. She dropped the instruments in her hands, and they clattered loudly against the sterile floor, their metallic crash cutting through the suffocating silence. In her shock, she stumbled backward, knocking into a chair, which toppled over with a thud, sending her sprawling onto the cold, unforgiving ground. "Doctor!" Grace's panicked voice pierced the room. Her face, pale as wax, was frozen in fear as she hesitated to rise from her seat. Claudia, trembling and wide-eyed, struggled to prop herself up on the examination table, momentarily forgetting her own pain in the face of her growing anxiety. "Mom, what's happening? Why did the doctor fall?" she whispered, her voice fragile and breaking as fresh tears welled up in her eyes, cascading down her cheeks. Helena remained on the ground for what felt like an eternity, her breath uneven, her chest heaving. The image of what she had just seen burned into her mind. Something so wrong, so out of place. It defied all reason. Slowly she lifted her gaze, only to be met with the terrified faces of Grace and Claudia, their expressions locked in a blend of fear and helplessness. "Doctor, please, tell me what's going on," Grace pleaded, her voice no more than a fractured whisper trembling with desperation. "What's happening to my daughter?" Helena forced herself to move. Pressing her shaking hands against the fallen chair, she pushed herself upright, though it took every ounce of strength to project a semblance of calm. Her hands clutched her chest as she fought to regulate her breathing, but the words she needed to say felt stuck, heavy, and unyielding. She started, but her voice faltered, trailing off into silence. Claudia's sobs broke the tense air, her frail voice cutting through with a chilling vulnerability. "Mum, am I going to die?" she asked, her wide, tear-filled eyes locked onto her mother's, seeking reassurance that neither of them felt equipped to give. Grace knelt beside her daughter, her hands cupping Claudia's face with a gentleness that belied her own unraveling composure. "Don't say that, sweetheart. Nothing bad is going to happen. The doctor is going to fix this, right?" Her voice cracked as she turned to Helena, her expression a fragile mix of hope and despair. Helena closed her eyes tightly for a moment, taking a deep breath to steel herself. The words, "something alive," echoed like a sinister refrain in her mind. She couldn't let the terror consume her. She couldn't let them see how shaken she truly was. Reopening her eyes, she met their gazes, her voice steadier now, though it was clear how much effort it took to hold herself together. "Grace, Claudia, listen to me," Helena began, her tone firm but tinged with a softness meant to reassure. "I saw something. Unexpected. It's unusual, yes, but I'm here to help. I won't stop until I figure this out. I promise, you're not alone in this." Grace shot up from her seat, her face contorted in anguish. "Unusual? What does that even mean?" she demanded, her voice rising, trembling with fear. "My daughter is suffering, and I'm powerless to help her. Tell me the truth, please." "Mom, don't leave me alone," Claudia whispered, reaching for her mother with trembling hands, her voice so faint yet devastatingly raw that Grace's resolve nearly shattered under the weight of it. Helena took a deep breath and moved closer to the examination table, crouching to pick up the scattered instruments. Her hands still quivered as she straightened them on the tray. Claudia, she said gently, her tone deliberate and soothing. This is something I've never encountered before. But I swear to you, your mom and I are in this together. I won't stop until I understand what's happening and how to help you. You have my word. Grace's tear-streaked face turned toward Helena, searching for answers. She nodded, though her whole body shook, her trust balancing on the razor's edge of hope and despair. I trust you, Doctor, but please, you have to tell me what is happening to my daughter. Helena hesitated. For the first time in her career, words failed her. She knew that the truth, at least what little of it she understood, would only invite more fear, more questions than she could answer. What stirred inside Claudia was beyond comprehension. Something not just strange, but deeply unsettling. Stepping out of the room, Helena closed the door softly behind her and leaned back against the cool hallway wall. Her legs felt like lead, her breathing shallow and erratic. The echo of her own words, something alive, pounded in her mind like a relentless hammer. She squeezed her eyes shut, desperate to erase the haunting image of what she had witnessed, but it wouldn't leave her. Whatever she had discovered went against everything she knew, defying both her medical expertise and her understanding of the world itself. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the rapid thudding of her heart. Taking a deep breath once, then twice, she tried to regain her composure. Clarity, strength. She needed both. Inside the exam room, Grace and little Claudia were relying on her. They couldn't know that. At that very moment, even their doctor was battling her own fear. "Come on, Helena," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible. "You've got this. They need someone strong right now, and that's you." A few seconds passed before she finally felt steady enough to move again. She smoothed her white coat, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward with newfound resolve. Her mind focused on one singular mission: helping Claudia, no matter what it took. Back in the exam room, Helena pushed the door open slowly. Grace and Claudia turned to her, their eyes a mix of hope and fear. Grace perched on the edge of the exam table, clutching her daughter's hand tightly. Claudia lay still, her eyes closed, soft sobs shaking her small frame. "Doctor, are you okay?" Grace asked cautiously, noticing the faint tremble Helena was trying to mask. Helena took measured steps toward them, her movements deliberate, though her uncertainty still echoed like a drumbeat inside her. "I'm fine, Grace," she said gently. "I'm sorry. I needed a moment to think. What we're dealing with here isn't something I see often, but that doesn't mean we can't handle it. I'm here for you both, and we're going to face this together." Her voice, steady yet soothing, began to ease the tension in the room. Claudia opened her eyes slowly, glancing at Helena with a fragile spark of hope, tinged with apprehension. "Is it going to hurt again?" Claudia asked in a faint voice, clutching her mother's hand even tighter. Grace stroked her daughter's hair, her face etched with worry. Helena moved closer to the table, crouching slightly to meet Claudia's gaze. "Sweetheart, I'm going to be as gentle as possible, but I do need to take another look to understand what's happening. Every little detail matters, so I can help you, okay?" Claudia inhaled deeply, her small body still trembling. "Will you make me better, Doctor?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, tears brimming in her wide, fearful eyes. Helena smiled softly and placed a reassuring hand on the girl's shoulder. "That's exactly what we're going to do, Claudia. I promise I'm here to take care of you and figure this out." Grace, pale but holding on to her composure, nodded slowly. Though fear lingered in her expression, Helena's words seemed to offer her a fragile sense of comfort. "I trust you, Doctor, but—" Grace hesitated, her voice trembling as she forced herself to ask the question. "What did you see?" Helena exhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts before responding. "I saw something I didn't expect. Something uncommon," she admitted, her tone calm but firm. "But what matters now is that we work together to fix this. You're not alone in this, I promise." With that, she slipped on her gloves, her movements this time confident and sure. She adjusted the instruments on the tray and prepared to continue. Though the memory of what she had seen still lingered, etched into her mind, Helena refused to let fear take over. Claudia's hopeful eyes and Grace's desperate faith anchored her resolve. They needed answers, and she was determined to find them. Positioning the colposcope with precision, Helena illuminated the affected area, bracing herself for what she knew awaited her. This time, she was ready. Her hands steady, her focus absolute, she brought the light closer, scrutinizing every detail. What she saw stole her breath, but she didn't falter. There, embedded deep within Claudia's vaginal canal, was an insect of considerable size. Its grotesque form was dark and segmented, its twisted body writhing faintly under the harsh glare of the light. It had burrowed into the inflamed tissue, which was beginning to necrotize. Around it, angry, reddened flesh oozed with pus, a clear sign of a severe infection. A sharp, metallic odor filled the room, unmistakably signaling the release of toxins and bacteria that were worsening the situation at an alarming rate. For a fleeting moment, a wave of nausea threatened to rise, but Helena pushed it aside. She couldn't afford hesitation. Not now. Claudia and Grace needed her to be strong. With a deep, stabilizing breath, Helena tightened her grip on the instrument and prepared to act. Whatever it took, she would find a way to save this brave little girl. Helena took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay composed. The discovery was horrifying, but she couldn't afford to show fear or uncertainty in front of Grace and Claudia. "Doctor, what is it?" Grace asked, her voice trembling with anxiety. Her daughter, Claudia, began to breathe erratically at the sound of her mother's distress, her wide eyes filling with tears and terror. Helena lifted her gaze, stepping back slightly to conceal her worried expression. She removed her gloves with deliberate, measured movements before speaking. "Grace, Claudia, I need you both to listen carefully," she began, her voice steady but calm, every word chosen with care. "What I've found is an unusual insect. A larva has embedded itself in the tissue." Claudia gasped, her hands flying to cover her face. "Mom, there's something inside me. Get it out. Get it out now," she cried, her tears streaming down her cheeks as her body shook uncontrollably. Grace pulled her daughter into an embrace, fighting to steady her own voice as she stroked Claudia's hair. "Shh, my love. It's going to be okay. The doctor will help you. I promise this will all be over soon," she whispered, though her tone cracked under the weight of her own fear. Helena stepped closer, her resolve strengthening as she knelt to Claudia's level. "Claudia, I know this is frightening," she said gently, "but I'm here to remove it. I won't let it hurt you any further. Right now, we need to work together to fix this, okay?" Her words were steady, but inside she felt the full gravity of the situation bearing down on her. Grace looked up at the doctor, her tear-filled eyes pleading for reassurance. "How bad is it, doctor? Is she going to be okay?" she asked, clutching her daughter as though letting go might mean losing her. Helena let out a heavy sigh. She couldn't sugarcoat the truth, but didn't want to frighten them any more than they already were. "It's serious, Grace. The larva has started to necrotize the tissue, releasing toxins that are causing a severe infection. But we can handle this. I'll need to act quickly to remove it and stop the infection from spreading." Claudia's sobs grew louder as she clung to her mother's hand. "Mum, please make it go away. I don't want it there," she begged, her voice breaking under the weight of her panic. Helena gently took Claudia's trembling hand in hers. "Look at me, Claudia," she said softly. "I know you're scared, but you're not alone. We're going to get through this together, and I'll be with you every step of the way. Do you trust me?" Through her tears, Claudia gave a small nod, though her fear was still etched into her face. "You're so brave, sweetheart," Helena assured her. "That courage is going to help us get you through this." She turned to Grace, her expression serious but composed. "Grace, I'll need your help. We have to keep her calm while I prepare the equipment to remove it. This won't be easy, but it's absolutely necessary." Grace wiped her tears with the back of her hand and nodded firmly. "I'll do whatever it takes, Doctor. Just, please, save her." Helena turned to her instruments, her mind racing as she prepared for a procedure she had never imagined performing. The discovery was not only shocking, but deeply unsettling. How had the lava ended up there? What kind of insect could cause this level of destruction? The questions churned in her mind, but there was no time to dwell on them. Claudia needed her now, and she was determined to face the unknown to save her. The air in the room grew heavy, nearly suffocating, as the putrid smell from the infected area filled the space. Even as someone accustomed to difficult cases, Helena felt the scene press against her chest like a physical weight. The tissue surrounding the lava was deteriorating rapidly, the infection advancing like a silent poison. The necrotic, oozing flesh was a clear and urgent warning. There was no time to waste. Helena closed her eyes for a brief moment, gathering the strength to speak. When she opened them again, her gaze was steady, her voice warm but resolute as she addressed Grace and Claudia. "Let's do this together," she said firmly, ready to face whatever it took to bring Claudia back to safety. "Grace, I need you to listen carefully," said Helena, her voice steady but laced with empathy as she met the mother's tear-streaked gaze. Grace, clutching Claudia tightly, lifted her head. Her eyes, swollen and red from crying, were filled with panic at the doctor's grave tone. "What is it, Doctor? What's happening to my daughter?" she asked, her voice trembling and barely audible. Helena stepped closer, her movements deliberate, and inhaled deeply before speaking, her words precise and measured. "What I found is a parasite, a larva, that has embedded itself in Claudia's internal tissues. It has caused a severe infection, and the surrounding tissue is beginning to necrotize. We need to act immediately to remove it before the infection spreads further." The words hit like a heavy blow. Grace gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as terror clouded her face. "A parasite," she whispered, as though struggling to grasp the horrifying reality. How did it get there? What does this mean?" Grace's voice cracked, her questions falling into the charged silence. Claudia, catching the word parasite, burst into a fit of sobs, her small frame trembling as she clung to her mother's hand. "Mommy, I don't want it inside me. Please, get it out, get it out!" she cried, her desperation cutting through the room. Helena crouched to Claudia's level, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, I know this is scary, but I'm here to help you. I won't let this parasite hurt you any more than it already has. We'll take it out, but I need you to trust me and be brave. Can you do that for me?" Claudia nodded through her tears, though fear still lingered in her wide eyes. "Will it hurt?" she asked in a trembling whisper. "I'll do everything I can to make sure it doesn't. I promise to take care of you every step of the way," Helena assured her, her voice a soothing mix of firmness and tenderness that seemed to ease some of the child's tension. Grace, meanwhile, was barely holding herself together. "Doctor, how serious is this? Is my daughter... Will she be okay?" she asked, desperation threading her voice. Helena held Grace's gaze, her expression unwavering. "It's serious, Grace, but not beyond what we can handle. The biggest danger is the infection, which is progressing quickly. If we act now and remove the parasite, we should be able to stop it before it causes further damage. I need you to trust me." Grace nodded quickly, as though clinging to the doctor's confidence was the only way to keep herself steady. "I trust you, Doctor. Do whatever you need to do. Just save her." Turning to the surgical instruments, Helena began to prepare for the procedure. Inside, a storm of worry brewed, but outwardly, she remained composed and resolute. The sight of the necrotized tissue, the sharp tang of antiseptic in the air, and the weight of the moment could have overwhelmed anyone else. But Helena knew she didn't have the luxury of hesitation. Claudia needed someone to fight for her, and Helena was determined to be that person. The hospital buzzed with urgency as the medical team rushed Claudia toward the operating room. The girl's sobs mingled with the rhythmic clatter of the gurney's wheels on the tile floor. Her small hand clutched Grace's with a grip that spoke of unyielding fear, as if that connection could shield her from what lay ahead. "Mommy, don't leave me," Claudia pleaded, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. Grace leaned down, her voice a whisper of forced calm. "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm with you, and everything is going to be okay. I promise," she murmured, though her trembling hands betrayed her words. At the double doors of the operating room, a kind yet firm nurse stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need to take her in now. I promise she'll be in the best hands," the nurse said, her tone meant to reassure. Grace hesitated, her hands gripping Claudia's for just a moment longer before she released them. The look in her eyes was one of quiet desperation. A mother forced to place her child's life in someone else's care. As the doors swung shut behind the gurney, Grace stood frozen, her chest heaving with silent sobs. Inside the sterile walls of the operating room, Helena took her place, her resolve unshaken. Claudia's life was in her hands, and she wouldn't let her down. Inside the operating room, the air was thick with tension. Helena, now dressed in her surgical gown, studied Claudia's frail body under the glaring surgical lights. Her team stood ready, knowing this would be an incredibly delicate procedure. Every second mattered. "Let's stay precise. We have to remove the parasite without causing further damage," Helena instructed, her voice steady with determination. The colposcope illuminated the grotesque intruder once more, a parasite of shocking size embedded deeply in the infected tissue. Its segmented dark body writhed as if resisting their efforts to evict it from its host. "This won't be easy. It's firmly attached to the tissue," Helena remarked, adjusting the surgical instruments. The situation was worse than anticipated. The infection had spread more extensively, with necrotic tissue encasing the parasite like a trap threatening to expand further. "The infection is more severe than we expected. We'll need to remove a significant amount of damaged tissue to control it," Helena announced, her focus unwavering. The team worked in near silence, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. Each movement demanded surgical precision. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they battled both the parasite and the infection. After hours of painstaking effort, they finally succeeded. The parasite was extracted and placed into a sterile tray where its writhing form left the team speechless. It resembled something from a nightmare. "I've never seen anything like this," one surgeon muttered, unable to look away from the grotesque specimen. "It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's no longer inside her," Helena responded firmly. "Let's focus on stabilizing Claudia." In the waiting room, Grace couldn't ignore the burning sensation she felt in her own body any longer. She tried to distract herself by worrying about her daughter. "Is she okay?" she asked tremulously, clutching the edge of her sweater. Exhausted but composed, Helena reassured her. "We did everything we could and removed the parasite. Claudia is stable for now, but the next few hours will be critical. Her body needs time to recover, and the infection was severe." Grace exhaled deeply, her relief mixed with lingering fear. But then the discomfort she'd been feeling resurfaced in her thoughts. "Doctor, I need to tell you something," she confessed, her eyes filling with tears. "I've been feeling a strange burning sensation. I didn't want to mention it before, but now I'm scared." Helena's expression turned serious as she registered the mix of shame and panic on Grace's face. "Grace, we need to address this immediately. If you've been exposed to the same source, you could be dealing with the same issue as Claudia. Have you both shared anything recently or visited any unusual places?" she asked gently. Grace swallowed hard as an unsettling memory surfaced. "We went on an outing a few days ago near a lake. Claudia swam and I sat by the shore. Now that I think about it, the water didn't look normal, it was murky. But I never imagined something like this could happen." Helena nodded, already forming a theory. "It's possible the lake was contaminated. Let's run some tests right away to confirm," she said, guiding Grace to an examination room. The results were exactly what they feared. Grace was infected by the same parasite. Thankfully, her case was less advanced than Claudia's, but immediate action was necessary. Covering her face with trembling hands, Grace broke down. "How could this happen? What are we going to do? It's just us. I don't understand how this is possible." Helena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, her tone firm yet empathetic. "Grace, I know this is terrifying, but we need to act quickly. You're not alone in this. Claudia and you will get through this, and I'll be with you every step of the way." As the team prepared for Grace's procedure, the mystery of the contaminated lake loomed larger. What other dangers might it hold? The unanswered questions cast a heavy sense of unease over the hospital. The battle to save them was far from over. The ordeal left an indelible mark on the hospital staff, shaking them to their core. What began as a surgical fight to save a teenager and her mother soon spiraled into a medical crisis that threatened everyone involved. Post-surgical analysis revealed the parasite carried an aggressively infectious bacteria capable of wreaking havoc at alarming speed. Helena, still recovering emotionally from the grueling operation, was informed that 2 surgeons who had been in direct contact during the procedure were now showing troubling symptoms. The nightmare was far from over, and the struggle to uncover the full scope of the contamination had only just begun. Small cuts on their hands, seemingly insignificant, had become rapidly infected, showing the same signs of necrosis that had been seen in Claudia. The medical team rushed to understand how the bacteria had spread so quickly. The hospital authorities responded swiftly, putting in place strict biosecurity measures. All personnel involved in the procedure were placed under observation, and the operating rooms were thoroughly disinfected. Masks, double gloves, and protective suits became mandatory for every procedure as fear began to spread among the hospital staff. "Could it affect more people?" a nurse asked, visibly worried. We've contained the situation as best as we can, but we can't take any chances. We need to stay alert for any symptoms over the next few days. Helena responded, though the concern on her face was unmistakable. Fear hung in the air at every corner of the hospital. Whispers from the staff filled the hallways, and many avoided approaching the area where Claudia and Grace had been treated. The case had sparked a deep sense of vulnerability that no one could ignore. Despite all of this, both mother and daughter showed remarkable strength. The days that followed were a blur of intense treatments, broad-spectrum antibiotics, and additional surgeries to control the infection and repair the damage caused by the parasite. Both women required skin grafts to replace the severely affected areas. Claudia, though still frightened by what had happened, began to show signs of recovery. "Will it ever be like before?" she asked one day, her voice trembling as she held Grace's hand. Grace, who was also recovering, smiled gently, though her eyes betrayed the pain she still felt. "Of course, my love. This is just another challenge we'll face together. We're strong, and no one can take that from us," she said, stroking Claudia's hair. The affected medical staff also received immediate care. However, in one case, the infection advanced so severely that a surgeon had to undergo amputation of a finger to prevent the bacteria from spreading further. The news left everyone in shock. "The important thing is that you're alive and made the right decision in time," Helena reassured the surgeon during his recovery, trying to ease his frustration. "I know, but it's hard not to think about how something so small could change my life forever," he replied, his voice a mix of resignation and sadness. Finally, after weeks of distress, Claudia and Grace stabilized, though the physical and emotional scars would take time to heal. They were both thankful to have survived such a harrowing ordeal. Over time, they began to rebuild their lives, but with a renewed sense of caution. Claudia, a girl who had once loved swimming and exploring nature, now avoided contact with stagnant water or unknown lakes. Grace, for her part, became a strong advocate for the importance of hygiene and safety on outdoor excursions. "I never imagined something like this could happen to us, but we've learned, and now we know how to protect ourselves better," Grace said to a neighbor who asked about her experience. Today, Claudia and Grace share their story with others, hoping to prevent anyone else from going through the same nightmare. While the tragedy left indelible marks, it also gave them a new perspective on life. Every day is an opportunity to be stronger, more cautious, and, above all, more grateful to be alive. Thank you for staying with us through this incredible story of resilience and hope. Claudia and Grace's journey reminds us all of the strength we carry within, even in the face of unimaginable challenges. Their courage turned a moment of fear into a lifetime of wisdom, inspiring us to cherish every day and take nothing for granted. If their story moved you as much as it did us, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales that touch the heart and inspire change. And remember, every day is a chance to be stronger, wiser, and more grateful. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.